Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Pineapple Podcast. Today, I'm joined with Anne Bossy. Anne Bossy is a private lending extraordinaire. She is a real estate investor. So, guys, remember with the Pineapple Podcast, it's all about being tough on the outside, sweet on the inside, and wearing your crown of gratitude proudly. Welcome, Anne Bossy, to the Pineapple Podcast.
Thanks for having me on, Mitch. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much. And I really I couldn't wait for you to join this podcast because, as you know, this is a small community of people that we're typically dealing with. And you have not only been a pioneer in private lending, but you've actually shared your knowledge and your information and your insights in terms of some of the tips and tricks and techniques that you need to know and be aware of in a private lending. So that's why I was looking forward to having you on board here with our podcast. So Anne, I really want to step back a little bit and let's understand, when you decided to get into real estate, what was that transition like for you? Like, were you like, yep, this is what I'm doing, or were you feeling it out and saying, okay, I think I feel like I know this is what I want to do until you got into it in a bigger scale?
Yeah, it was just one of those things that wasn't really planned. But I see it more now with as I go on and meet more people. In other words, I'm talking about people my age who get into real estate investing quite late in life. My husband and I were approaching retirement, and we realized when we sat down and did some of our numbers with our financial planner at the time that we were not going to be satisfied. We were not going to be happy with what we could get. My husband actually had no pension at all through his job, only through the Canadian pension plan in Quebec, and I had a small pension from nursing. But because I had begun nursing late in life, I wasn't going to be able to collect my full pension from that either. So my husband actually was the one who said, we should get like an apartment building, collect rents or something. And I thought, well, that sounds like a great idea. So I started looking up real estate, how do you do that? And came across Scott McGilvery, of course, as chance would have it. Figured
Yes.
he's never going to come to Montreal. He'll never. Nobody ever comes to Montreal. Nobody ever comes to Quebec.
Yeah.
And I just ticked a box, and a couple of months later, lo and behold, Scott McGilvery was coming to Montreal. So we attended, and we signed up, as everybody does, or as many of the stories go. We signed up for the 3-day weekend, and just sort of went from there.
Love that. Absolutely. That's brilliant. This is what, it's a typical example of the law of attraction, right? You've actually identified there is a need. Whatever that looks like, there is a need. And then you have Scott coming into town and he's providing a potential solution. And I love the fact that you embraced it because a lot of people sometimes things show up in their lives and they ignore it, right? And they move on. And then that goes to somebody else. So the fact that you embrace it, I think it's brilliant on you, because you're right. Later on in life, when you really start to look, okay, where am I going now? My years for work or employment is diminishing because you're getting closer to retirement. And let's face it, it gets a little more difficult when you have to change jobs or go to a new environment later on in life. So you really do have to put something in place for yourself. I love the fact that you shared, you know, that when you look at your pension possibilities, it probably is not going to support you in the later stage in life. So you got to do something now. And the thinking is brilliant. Like, let's buy an apartment building. I love that. So you did the workshop, you realized that, hey, you know what, there is something here. But now I know that you kind of gravitated towards the private lending side of the real estate investing, which I find very unique because there's definitely some cool pluses um, on that, pros and cons to everything. But I do like what it offers. And what did you find was really attracting you to the private lending side?
Well, I didn't want to at first at all, right? I had the
Ah,
apartment building in my head.
right.
And when we went to our first summit, and or maybe it was yeah, we went to the first summit, and we sat down with a couple of people, and this is going back to 2018. Keyspire wasn't what it is now. And there was no Facebook groups or anything. There was just a
Right.
bulletin board, and it
Yeah,
was
yeah,
hard to get to know people. So the
yeah,
summits were really important because you could sit down with people and see them in person. So, I sat down with a couple of the people who were presenting there,
yeah,
and they went over our situation. And at the time, there were several, people were either into the burrs, or flip to yourself,
yeah,
and buy and hold, and there was a sprinkling of flips and things. So it was, they were all long term. And what people were saying to me, and I knew too. In fact, one very well-known Keyspire person said to me, you better not be thinking of a 20-year plan. And I said, no, I know, I could keel over any minute. And he said, well, what do you think? And I said, maybe a 10-year plan. And he goes, no, think 5.
wow,
And so that was a bit of an eye opener. And I said,
right,
that's not, this is not, buy and hold and things like that. It's not going to work. And even with the big multifamily people, which was not being done that much at the time, it was, you got to think about like a 5-year stabilization before it really comes together and you begin to get on solid financial ground. So we didn't know what to do. And people were saying, well, what about private lending? And I thought, well, that sounds boring. I came here, to do something far more exciting than that. And it took a while to actually think it through and talk it over with my husband, where we realized maybe that we have to. And then of course it was like, well, lend what? We don't have any money. And of course we
yeah,
did. We just didn't know how to access it. And so once I decided, okay, I guess this is what we got to do, I just dove right into it, and started looking, okay, how can I get money? So we went through the usual refinancing our property or our house that we were living in at the time. I began looking into lines of credits. I began to go through my credit cards. I began to apply for some credit cards, anything that would get me access to money, especially because at the time, lending was done almost 100% by cash. it
yep,
was
yep,
it was cash back then. There was, that was the
wow.
way it was done. People didn't really know how to use the uh,
So
retirement savings.
right. So I love what you're saying there because this is your journey in the beginning or the front of it. And really and truly, the lesson here is, and for all of our viewers here as well, we're always sitting on what we call dead equity once you own a property. There is a set of money there that you just simply can't touch. Your loan to value in a bank on a residential home is typically 80%. So there's always a 20% that you're sitting on. As the property grows in value, you may not have access to the capital all the time. You got to go revisit the bank. You can ask for a line of credit. You can do a refinancing. You can see how you can get options in order to get access to capital. Because why do you want to do that? If private lending is your goal or that's your strategy for building your business, then essentially what you have is to create a pot of working capital. That capital is deployed. Obviously, you will get into how you deploy it and things like that. But the idea here, or the principle is, working capital deployed earns a certain interest coming back to you. That interest then comes back to you as income, and then obviously you can then redeploy that money and continue to let the funds grow as a private lender. And why private lending versus, let's say, property acquisition? Well, it's simple. You have your time. You can do whatever you need to do while that capital is working for you. So you don't necessarily need to have a strong skill set in property management. You can still keep your day job if you love your day job or whatever it is you want to do, spend time with family. So Anne, I think that's another area too that I think adds a tremendous amount of value. Like, have you seen the benefit of being able to have your time while your capital is out working for you?
Oh, absolutely. And I've learned that it suits me well. Having gone into the other side where we did eventually buy a duplex and rent it out.
Nice.
And the only way we were able to afford the down payment was through capital that we had made through private lending. So every penny that we made through the private lending, we put that aside, and we were able to purchase a small duplex in Quebec and rent it out. So and we didn't like it. So going back to your question about,
Yeah.
you know, did we enjoy having, you know, the free time that private lending allows, and not have to be on it all the time? Once, you know, it's very labor intensive in the beginning, because you're getting to know the person you're going to partner with. You want to know the deal. You've got to go through all your due diligence. But then once it's done, in our particular case, we didn't worry about it. Some people are not good private lenders. They worry about it constantly. You know, when am I going to get
Right.
paid back? When I, you know, I'm not like that. When I pick my people, I put 100% confidence in my people, and then I don't think about it that often, because I have that much confidence in my own due diligence and my relationships with the people that I choose to work with. So it was and that works for me.
I
I think
love, yeah, I absolutely love that. Sorry there, Anne. But you know, you're stepping onto something that really we want to unpack that a little bit more. The due diligence for a private lender. It's not just about lending your money. At the end of the day, you as the person who's taking the venture or assuming the risk, you need to minimize that risk all the time. So one of the things, as you clearly stated, Anne, is people, you need to know the people. You need to do diligence around the people that you're investing with, because one is viability of the project, and two is their track record, right? And then their reputation, obviously. So give us some tips, like what are some of the things, if somebody approached me and say, hey, I have this great land development deal, you know, where do I begin with in due diligence, Anne?
I think I'm I think that that's one of the things that you can find a lot of information on. In and by that I mean how to do due diligence, and it starts, typically it starts with the plan itself of the person who's approached you as a private lender. You want to look at what their idea is, and you want to see if it makes sense. You want to do your own investigation into maybe the area and the kind of construction projects or whatever going on. You want to familiarize yourself. Recently, there was somebody who approached me about financing the acquisition of a mall. So I had to look up malls. I wanted to know, okay, well, why would somebody buy a mall? I thought malls were out now. I thought online
Yes,
shopping, but it turned out that this particular venture was actually quite wise. So I don't mind doing that kind of research. I like to do the research. I want to find out more about what my potential partner is interested in. I want to know the area. My husband and I are lucky because we eventually did retire from our jobs. We actually have the time to go travel sometimes, and we have literally hopped into
beautiful,
the car and gone out and
beautiful.
looked at the properties, or looked at the idea, and looked around and asked a lot of questions. You don't always have to do that, of course, but you want to know the situation. You want to know what the all the factors that the person is using to do make their own decision about why this is a good deal. You want to understand all that. I like to have what an after repair value is, of course, and it can't be pulled out of a hat. I would like to know, well, who says it's going to be worth that much? And of course, you got to know your exit strategies. Well, what if that after repair value turns out to be less than what you thought? And what everybody's worried about nowadays with the markets, what happens if the market drops just at the time that you want to refinance, or just at the time that you want to sell? So you want to have all those exit strategies in place, and make sure that the person, it has all their I's dotted and T's crossed. And I also like, and I think other people would agree with this, there has to be the borrower needs to bring a certain amount of professionalism into it. What's a really good sign for me is when I actually don't even have to ask those questions, because they already know that you're going to ask those
Right.
questions, and they've put it all out into a nice pro forma, or whatever they choose to use. That's a sign of professionalism. That's somebody who's thought through everything, so that you almost don't have to. There's
Absolutely. I
that answer your
love that.
question?
Yeah. No, that I love that because this is an integral part of your sort of your journey into private lending. There is a lot of work that has to be done, and you are the one that has to do it. But you also need to know where you're starting from. So the fact that you shared this with me, I think it's absolutely brilliant because there are things you're qualifying. You're qualifying the deal, you're qualifying the person who's behind the deal. Those are important two factors that you need to do. And don't be afraid to ask the questions. Don't be afraid to network and find out, well, who else have you worked with? And give me their name. I'd love to chat with them to learn what is the experience like? What are your projects like? What are your deliverables like? And one of the most important thing you said there is a number is a number, and you can make that in your prospectus. Yeah, absolutely. But it's got to be vetted. You have to satisfy yourself that it makes sense. So, what are the comparables in the area? With the market shifting the way it is today, you're absolutely right. What used to be, let's say, 1.5 is probably 1.2, right? But you got to make sure that the comparables are there because we don't pull numbers out of the hat. That would be the easiest way to do it, but we really have to see what is around us. The other thing is appraisals. There's a lot of appraisals where you get the as is value, and then you get in terms of what is the value on complete. So we do have the ability to make sure we know what is the end value so that you can say, yep, you know what, this is a viable project. Because ultimately you want the person who's behind the project, the working partner, you want them to have success. In fact, you want them to have a lot of success because then they can go on to do another project and another project. And that's you now as the investor partnering up with these people so that you can have a vetted way of your capital working for you, and you're not always having to screen the person, right? So
Yeah.
I absolutely love that with you, Anne. I think that's absolutely brilliant with that format of how do you vet somebody and the deal at the same time.
Yes, and I like what you said there too, because one of the things that's come across my observations are a, a little bit of I don't know if I would call it competition or distrust, um, where because you have good borrowers, bad borrowers. We've all heard the stories of people who've gone into default,
Yes.
and lenders have been left with very little, nothing at all. But there's also such a thing as not such great lenders, people who are not necessarily as invested in the success of their potential partner. And I feel sometimes I need to remind people, uh, why would you lend the money on a project and then change your mind a few months down the road, or change your mind just before you're about to sign on the dotted line because you suddenly have a doubt? It's fair. I mean, you want to tell people, if you're not feeling right about something, then don't do it. But but be confident in your due diligence. And if
Right.
you're not, then ask somebody to help you out. Be a good human, as they say. If you've promised that you're going to be signing on that dotted line, or if you've written that agreement, um, don't forget your success is dependent on the success of this potential partner. You want them to succeed, so don't do things that are going to make them not succeed, because that's no help for you either. I don't know if I'm saying that properly, and I
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
mean to say it in a bad way. I
I
just mean to
agree.
say you're supposed to be partners, and your
That's right.
success is supposed to be mutual. So don't put
That's
up
right.
barriers to the point where that's where barriers to your own success, I think, is what I'm trying to say. And I
Yeah,
see this
I
sometimes, and
love
I
that.
don't like that very much.
Yeah, no, I love the framing on that because the reality is when it comes to this type of investment where you're investing in a person or a project and so on, you really have a commitment to them as well because it's a dual thing where your capital is coming together, their expertise is coming together for mutual success. And there are things that the development or the project is going to encounter that sometimes require you as the lender to have some flexibility, some heart, because when the project is completed, that's when you have all of the rewards coming back to you. But until then, we don't know what they will encounter. For example, the city permit might get delayed 12 months, which is not unheard of, and it's out of everybody's control. But the person who's borrowing, the working partner, they actually factor in that if they need to carry it for a year or two more, that they've built that contingency in there so that you are covered as the investor to continue getting your interest payment if that is the way it was set up. Or if it's set up where you get the payment, balloon payment at the end, that's all factored in. So therefore, they're doing their best to mitigate your risk, and your assessment of the deal is your critical component. But I love, Anne, what you say. Have confidence in your own due diligence. You've spent the time to learn, to understand, to analyze the industry, the project, the neighborhood, whatever it is you're doing, you've done that due diligence. You know for a fact if this is a viable project from day one because you've done that homework. If you didn't do the homework yet, I think that's where nervousness come in. So please do the homework, right? It's very simple. It's very straightforward. There are information available to you every which way. The working partner can supply, your agents can supply. There's so much information just even on Google, right? So there is a lot of work that you can do. And more importantly, you can see the people that you're investing with as well, because typically most of the projects, you may have more than one financial partner. So, Anne, I just absolutely love that. I think I really wanted to spend a little more time on that, where there is a certain responsibility as the private lender. It's not just, okay, the pressure is on the working partner. It's a collaborative effort. And collaboration in a true sense. You're working together. You're either going to get a particular interest payment to you, or maybe it might be equity shared with you, in which case it's more like a joint venture. But the fact is, you are coming in together for the success of a project. And you know, I love the fact that you're sharing this, because once you kind of got into your rhythm, what are some of the details that you found that was unique to your situation in terms of learning things or understanding that as a lender, it's not just simply here's my money, but more like, you know, how do you satisfy yourself before you get to that level?
I'm not sure I understand that question. Could you say that again, please?
With the investments, right? When you are getting into the due diligence period, is there anything else that you're looking at for saying, I'm going to move ahead with this deal or not?
Yeah. Oh, yes. So, there's, oh, okay. There's a couple of things. At the last summit, I was really impressed with the various speakers who mentioned laddering, or I think laddering is probably the term I'll stick with.
Right.
In other words, it's about planning. When I speak to people who ask me about private lending, I usually ask them what they want, because you're looking for maybe cash up, cash up front. You need a monthly dividend to either pay off an interest rate, because the money you're lending is going to have an interest rate, or maybe you're planning long term. You want to build up your wealth for later on in life, or your children, or you need a mix of different things, because there's different ways of private lending that will give you different results. Equity versus just
That's
balloon
right.
payments of something or other, and so on and so forth. And so it's one of the things that's going to make me decide on a project is it fulfilling what I need right now. If the project that I last worked on is now terminated, and this was something that was giving me monthly cash that I still need to buy my groceries, then that's going to be the one that I'm going to target over somebody else who maybe has an amazing project, but it's a long-term balloon payment 2 or 3 years down the road, and I've already got one.
Right.
So I wish I could do them all. I wish I could do them all. but I
Yes.
don't have that kind of capital behind me, so I have to pick and choose, and it's got to fall into the slot that I particularly am needing to fill right now. And
Yeah.
I think the other thing too I'd like to say is people talk about relationships a lot, and I notice that the word relationship means different things to different people. There are some people that are very dollars and cents, very number oriented, and a good relationship is somebody who can provide them with that sort of data that they thrive on. And they don't necessarily need to like you. They just need to know that they like that deal and that this deal works. And so that relationship means that they will reinvest with this person because this person's a numbers guy, and they fulfill exactly that need for the lender who just needs to see everything very cut and dried. And other people relationships mean more like, well, there's like quite a few good deals here in front of me. Which one am I going to pick? I'm going to pick the one of the person who I really like, the person I've met before, the person I've gone to a meetup with. And
Right.
so relationships are kind of a little different. And there's often emotion that's brought into it. We're not supposed to bring emotion into our real estate deals, but we do.
Yes, we do.
And so a lot of I will often know who I'm going to lend with even before they've asked, just because I've noticed them around, I've checked them out, I've looked at their deals, I like the area that they're invested in because it appeals to me. I may be feeling a little cool about one part of um, the real estate world where I'm not confident in that continuing to be a success, but then something else, say land development is looking very good right now, so I'm going to target somebody who's over there. And because I watch people, I'm a people watcher, and because I do go on the various social media sites and get to know people through that way, I often know, as I said ahead of time, I look at somebody and I think, oh, I just like the way this person ticks or that group. So a relationship for me starts often on my side. I pick.
Yeah.
So I don't know if other people do that or not.
It's, you know what, it's all part of the due diligence. And I love how you're framing this in, because this is really amazing information for me. If I'm coming to learn what I'm going to become as a private lender and what I have to do, this is it. At the end of the day, the networking is not on one side. It's not the working partner looking for you. It's two-phased. You're also looking for a great working partner because it's a long-term
Yes.
relationship. You're going to have to connect. You're going to have good vibes around the person or each other so that you can last, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, whatever that timeline is. But I love the fact that you're saying, I show up. I show up at the meetups. I show up on the Facebook get-togethers, wherever it is that investors and working partners are getting together. You got to show up. You got to have a feel for them. So I think that's absolutely brilliant, because the networking to me is a critical component. If you don't know the person or you don't see how they're interacting with people, then you're going to be making a judgment with not being solid in terms of what it is you're deciding. So I think that helps tremendously. The more time you spend with somebody, the better it becomes. Sometimes when you go into the general partner limited partnership world of where you're the limited partner lending out, sometimes they ask you, well, what are you, friends, family, business associates? Are you an accredited investor? So if you're falling under friends, family, and business associates, you need to show that you actually do have a relationship. And this is where getting together is really critical, because you're building a relationship that's going to last a long time to come. So I love that, Anne. I love absolutely the way you've shared that. I think it's absolutely brilliant. And for me as an investor as well, I think I understand the fundamentals. Make the decision, understand where you're going to where you're going to get your capital, because that capital is working capital. That's not the money you're spending. You're going to get an interest payment on that, and that's the money you use to pay down your running capital, line of credit interest. You keep some of that for your, if you're in a company, that goes towards company revenues. If it's on your personal side, it goes on the on your revenue or your income. Obviously, you'll settle up with the accountant later on when it's tax time. That's, that's a piece that the accountants are very important for. But you as the investor, the idea is create the plan. I like the fact, and that you talked about the laddering. I think it's brilliant because you really need to know what are the buckets I'm investing in, when are the returns coming back to me, so that you can redeploy the capital, and what are my contingency plans, right? I think those fundamentals, if they come together, is really going to give you strong confidence in order for you to make an investment. So, Anne, I just wanted to bring into the strategy. I know that you're really focused on the private lending, but like you said, you've also gone ahead now and you've used that capital that you earned and you put it into a property. Like, how cool is that, right? Is there plans, or do you have more than just the duplex that you looked at? What's your property ownership side of it? Because what I like is I'm making the money here, but now if I get enough, I can put it into actual property.
Yes, we that duplex, we actually sold it in July.
Okay, nice.
Yes, as I mentioned, we didn't particularly love the experience, and we when it came to the decision about whether or not to buy another property and begin to develop that side of our real estate investing, we decided that we was a good time to sell, and property values had gone up there.
Nice.
It was still, as COVID was ending, and it was a good time, and we thought, yeah, let's go and get rid of it now. So we did, um, and but then an opportunity came up to invest in Curacao,
Hey,
which was it was a decision on my part after having visited once.
yes,
I went there thinking, well, if I'm going to buy another property, it may as well be somewhere where I'm going to enjoy the property myself. It's not just going to be
absolutely.
a piece of
Yes.
income for me. It's going to be a place where I can go. And so I knew I didn't know what I was doing. So fortunately, I was able to meet or bring on a couple of partners who've helped me tremendously. And so
Beautiful.
we have two properties in Curacao. And I mean, I think again that's an age thing. Although I could maybe I was actually surprised at the last summit how lifestyle investing came up so often. It wasn't a buzzword for me since I've been in Keyspire. Maybe I just notice it more now, but I
Right.
was really impressed with younger people who also, along with their real estate goals, had this small portion of their why being dedicated towards lifestyle investing property
Yes.
where they could enjoy it with their families. So that was what it was for me. And I know that a lot of other people at my age are also looking for places that they want to own, but also be able to take advantage of. And the other big driver for me was I wanted to be an accredited investor. I needed to be an accredited investor. It was not a big thing. Well, actually, it's always been a big thing when you're in Quebec because uh,
Hey,
we're
yes.
barred in so many ways by moving forward with certain investments because of the civil code and the language law. So I needed to become an accredited investor, especially as now working partners getting very good legal advice are also saying that they can only uh,
Work.
work with
Yes.
accredited investors. So buying properties was a way for me to get past that barrier and be confident now that that opens up as a lender even more opportunities for me now as an accredited investor. So that was part of the reason why I got involved in buying some properties. But I have to say, it's pretty stressful. I don't like I'm not in this game to spend a lot of sleepless nights, let me tell you. So that's why I still tend to side towards the private lending. I have it suits
Absolutely.
me well. I have
Yes.
a certain risk tolerance I'm comfortable with.
Mm.
Some people when it comes to lending money, have almost no risk tolerance. Well, for me, buying properties, I have no risk tolerance whatsoever. You know, if a work guy doesn't show up, you know, on the
Yeah.
day he's supposed to, I have a heart attack. So it's not very enjoyable for me. So we'll see how far I go with that, but I have a feeling that I want a couple more and a couple more sun destinations. We shall see.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, lifestyle is definitely one of the best angles because, to your point, you can use it for your personal use, and then in between that, it's going to generate income at the end of the day. So you're really mastering your game, so to speak, in terms of I am a private lender, and I love the fact that you went and you actually own the property and you realize, you know what, I didn't want another job. So I'm not going to make the ROI that you can make in a property, but I'm going to be pretty good helping these guys make the money and I get a piece of it. And that piece of it is going to give you a lifestyle. It's going to supplement your income. There's so much power to that. And the most powerful thing, what are we all wanting at the end of the day? We want our time back. So this allows you to get your time back. The accredited investor, just, for those of you who might be wondering, well, what is that? At the end of the day, it's really what you consider a high net worth individual, and they have more leveraging in terms of how they can lend and what they can lend to. If not, then you're typically either in a friends, family, and business associates, or you're in an eligibility criteria. So that we'll unpack on another wonderful conversation or another podcast, because if we go into that, we'll spend the whole afternoon here. But just top line, this is what it's about. But Anne, again, I know that you also spend a lot of time helping other people who want to clarify with what private lending is all about. What's some of the best ways to get in touch with you?
Well, I'm pretty active, or at least I can be reached by telephone, email. I'm on WhatsApp. I actually like WhatsApp very much. And the usual, Zoom, all those things.
Cool.
So
So
I'm
I
pretty
will.
easy to find, actually.
Cool. And I'll put your contact information in the comments below. So guys, if you want to chat with Anne, just give her a buzz. She's definitely there, always willing to help. So Anne, any sort of last word or last advice as a coming into private lending, any sort of last minute tip you want to give us before we come to the end of the segment?
The only thing I actually would like to say, thanks for asking, is one of the things I've been pretty vocal about over the years is that private lenders sometimes don't think of themselves as being real estate investors. And a lot of new people get into real estate investment through private lending, and I hear people almost apologizing for it. Well, I'm only a private lender. And I want to say to you, first of all, you are more important than you think. You can probably do more with it than you think. And also, word to the working partners or the borrowers, please respect your private lenders as well. I know you do, but include them as partners, if you will, in the investment, so that the partnership is equitable on both sides. When you talk about your partners, don't just talk about the people that you're buying the building with, but your partners are also your financial partners, and it's helpful. It's helpful, and it's important. That's all I'll say.
I love that. Absolutely. This is a partnership, guys. Private lending is a vehicle that allows you to get involved in real estate at a significant level, because without the private lending, the deals can't happen. And without the working partners, the deals can't happen. So you want to make it happen. This is where we bridge together. We work together to make sure that we're mutually beneficial. And thank you so much for sharing your story with us and giving us so much insightful information today. I'm sure our viewers are absolutely going to love it.
Thanks for having me, Mitch.
So once again, folks, this is Mitch Parmasar with the Pineapple Podcast. Remember to hit the like, subscribe, and notify button as we grow our base. And remember, once again, it's about being tough on the outside, sweet on the inside, and wearing your crown of gratitude proudly. Thank you, guys. Bye.